Well, hello. Welcome to another reading of Redwall. Let's pick up where we left off last time in chapter 19. It was difficult to tell who was more surprised, Mathis or his party, or the rat sentries. There was a second pause. Then they scattered. One or two of the rats were a bit slow off the mark, but not as slow as Colin Vole and his mother, who were roughly grabbed by the fastest sentries. Mathis dodged, wiggled, and ran free, tripping a rat who was about the size of Mr. Vole. The young mouse ran, pushing the vole in front of him and calling him out. "Run, keep going, Mr. Vole. Try to make it to the woods and hide." The vole faltered. "But my wife, Colin, the rats have got them." Mathis pushed him roughly forward. "They'll get you too, if you don't hurry. Move yourself, Vole. You'll be no good to your family as a prisoner again." Taking Mathis's advice, Abraham Vole ran as fast as his legs would carry him. Mathis turned and picked up a heavy branch. He faced the oncoming rats. "Only a dozen of you," he taunted. "Let's see what you rats are made of. First come, first served." Mathis swung the branch. It whooshed through the air, causing the rats to stop in their tracks. As he advanced on them, flailing the branch, he shouted at the top of his voice, "Basil, Basil, staying here! Where are you?" The rats tried to circle Mathis. One got too near. A hefty blow from the improvised staff sent him crashing to the ground. Oh, well hit, sir. Jolly well hit." It was the hare. He came bounding up for all the world as he were on a Sunday school picnic. Grinning from ear to ear, Colin and Mrs. Vole came pointing in his wake. Mathis grasped with relief. "Basil, where in heaven's name did you get to?" The skillful creature dodged a rat, spun around, and landed a fierce double foot kick to its stomach. The rat bowled over, completely winded, all the fight knocked out of its body. Basil chuckled. "Sorry about that, Mathis, old lad. When these chaps gave up chasing me, I scooted back to my den. Spring cleaning, you know. A bit late, but I'm only a bachelor in a single quarters, what?" Mathis was flabbergasted. He was fighting off a dozen rats, trying to rescue the Vole family, while Basil was dusting out his den. The young mouse could scarcely hold his temper. "Oh, how nice of you, Mr. Hare. So glad you could join us," he said sarcastically, as they beat off rats and hurried the voles along. "I don't suppose you put the kettle on for tea?" Basil bowed to Mrs. Vole and offered her his paw. "Allow me, ma'am." "Why, yes, as a matter of fact, I did. Nothing like a fresh pot of mint tea after some good healthy exercise. What? Mathis struck a rat square in the face with the butt of his branch. The hare was obviously insane. Mint tea, indeed. "Well, I don't suppose you think I'm going to sit in your den drinking tea all afternoon," he yelled. Basil had a hemlock on a rat. He swung him and knocked two more flat to the ground. He winked at Mathis. "I certainly hope not, old bean. You see, it'll be a perishin' awkward, as I've only got 4-piece tea set, and if I'm not mistaken, the small gent who took off for the woods like a sculled duck is obviously the husband of this delightful Lady Vole. So I'll have to invite him too, won't I? Mathis tripped a rat with the branch. He was leaning to take Basil in his stride. Why, of course you will, Mr. Hare. What a bore you must think me. I'll probably sit around on the common hare and trench rat to make daisy chains. Basil dodged around a rat and laughed apparently. No need to get uppity, young feller. I thought I'd best shelter the voles and see 'em safe to the Abbey later. Obviously, you need to get back to Redwall post-haste. A family of voles would only slow you up. Mathis grinned ruefully. I apologize, sir. I accept your offer and help gratefully. I didn't mean to be rude. By now, they were at the edge of the common land. The rats had fallen back momentarily. Basil shook paws with Mathis. Good mouse. Right, cut along, young un. I'll see you when I deliver my charges back to the Abbey. Alone and unencumbered, Mathis struck off into the woods, traveling, dodging on wearing legs. He realized that his entire entry to Redwall would have to be from the Mossflower side, as the main gate would probably be under attack. Could the defenders hold out? Was Constance organizing the retaliation currently without him? Had the sentry stayed alert? Was Cornflower safe? Questions raced through Mathis's brain as he fought his way through the undergrowth. Taking a check on his bearings, he began to worry a little. The Abbey walls would be in sight over towards the northwest. Perhaps he hadn't fully realized the sprawling size of the woodlands. Yes, it was. Maybe if he kept on trekking the walls would soon come into view. From somewhere ahead, Mathis could hear the trickle and gurgle of a stream. He remembered that it had been some time since he had eaten and drunk. Changing directions, he followed the water sounds until he came across the banks of the stream. Laying face down on a low outcrop of redstone, Mathis drank his full of cool, sweet stream water. Further down the bank, he found some young dandelions. Gathering a bunch of tender leaves and bud, he made his way back to the sun-warmed sandstone and stretched out on his back, nibbling dandelions and gazing up at the cloudless blue June sky through the treetops. What an action-packed day it had been. Mathis was glad of the brief respite after all the excitement, but he told himself that he could not afford to stay long. He must press on to Redwall. He heaved a great sigh. The life of a warrior was very tiring. Closing his eyes momentarily, he thought of Martin the warrior. Did he ever feel tired? He must have. defending the abbey with his large heavy sword, wearing all that armor. Whatever happened to the sword? It had to be somewhere. Legendary weapons don't rust and wear away to nothing, otherwise they'd never get to be legends. A dragonfly hovered directly above the young mouse, gently stirring his whiskers. What was this strange creature doing in his territory? He glided a little closer. It was quite safe. The oddly garbed animal posed no threat to his authority as bailiff of this stretch of water. He was fast asleep, snoring like a squirrel in midwinter, oblivious to all about him. And I think I'm going to finish this part of the book so we can get to the quest part of Redwall. And it was late afternoon. There had been one or two minor setbacks, but Cluny and his squad had finally made it up into the elm tree. Some of the rats were really hopeless climbers, in Cluny's estimation. There had been quite a bit of jostling and slipping, and as for the idiot cheese thief, imagine waiting until you were 6 yards above the ground to find out that you were afraid and had no head for heights. Cluny thought angrily that if there hadn't been such an urge and need for silence, he'd have given him what for. The warlord began to wish that he had brought along more ferrets and weasels. They possessed good natural climbing ability. And that weasel, what was his name? Scrag, had been enormous help, boosting and encouraging the others. Even organized the lifting up of the plank. Cluny made a mental note for future reference. Officer material, that one. Despite all efforts, however, they were still below the edge of the parapet. Higher up, the elm branches became thin and whippy, not strong enough to support the plank's weight. Cluny shook stock of the situation. This was really as far as he could go, while still retaining some kind of safety factor on their hazardous assignment. He decided to call a halt. Wait, take a breather. Find somewhere that you won't fall from. In an hour or two, it'll be evening. There'll be lots of shadow and less daylight. The mice will have slowed up a bit by then. We'll catch them off guard. Scrag, see this lot? Keep still and quiet, will you? Scrag saluted smartly and offered a helpful comment. This branch I'm sitting on, Chief. I've just been testing it. It feels good and strong. Maybe we should mount the plank from here to the wall. It'll reach easily, though, enough. I know it's a bit of an uphill climb, but it shouldn't be too difficult. I don't fancy those branches up higher. They're too thin. Cluny climbed across and sat next to Scrag. He spoke in a whisper. Good thinking, Weasel. Yes, this branch'll do fine. Stick by me, Scrag. You're a useful soldier. With some of the blockheads I've got around me, I could be on the lookout for a new captain soon. You know what that means. Extra loot. A bigger share of plunder. Clooney always rewards initiative, Scrag. Play your cards right and you'll soon get promotion. Thanks, Chief. Don't worry. I won't let you down, Scrag murmured. On a lower branch, Cheese Thief, who had been eavesdropping on the conversation, sneered inwardly. Yes, Chief. No, Chief. 3 bags full, Chief. Who did that snotty weasel think he was? And as for Clooney promoting a weasel to captain over rats of his own kind, well, Redtooth and Darkclaw and others might have something to say about that. Upstart weasel. He had only joined up a day or two ago. If he got half the chance, Cheese Thief would fix Scrag all right. Abbot Mortimer looked thankfully up at the sky. Evening had come. They had lasted out well. The rats had not breached the wall in any way. Most of the main fighting had gone into a lull. Clooney's horde was only making spasmodic sails from the ditch now. Taking advantage of the interval, the defenders hauled up more rocks and rubble to the ramparters. Cornflower and her band of helpers were on top of the wall, keeping their heads low. They moved from post to post, serving each creature with a bowl of stew, some wild grapes, and a small loaf of honey-yard nut bread. What a calm, efficient young mouse Cornflower is, the abbot remarked to Constance. The badger passed a bundle of arrows to Ambrose Spike for distribution as she replied, Aye, that she is, Father Abbot. But she looks worried. Mathis, do you think? Doubtless, said Abbot dryly. The young mouse is on my mind as well as hers and yours. Constance shook her large, striped head. It's not like Mathis to go off like that. I've searched everywhere in my spare moments, but he's not in the abbey. Well, wherever he is, the abbot replied, I'm certain that he is helping our cause, so we'll just have to await his return and trust to Mathis's judgment and good sense. The two friends thankfully accepted food from Cornflower and her helpers. Both watched mystified as Winfred the Otter and Formal hosted and pulled up Seesaw into view. It was a plaything made in the distant past for the use of infant woodlanders. It had lain near the strawberry patch for as long as anyone could remember. Baby animals played on it throughout the year, as a seesaw was in perfect working order. Winfred and Formal sat down on the parapet. Bent doubled, two moles staggered up, carrying between them an enormous Purum Thar. That's a notice of Puranthon. That's a notice Bolander, my beauties. When the Bolander was positioned, Winfred and Formal hugged each other tightly. With a nod, they jumped heavily on the near seat. Whoosh! The big rock catapulted over the top of the parapet. Several seconds of silence followed. Then there was a crash, accompanied by screams of pain and shock from the rats packed into the ditch below. Winfred and Formal gravely shook paws. Yar, I reckon the pesky vermins got in an headache. I would assume so they would, chuckled Formal as everybody on the ramparts ran to seek cover from the artillery missile hurled by Cluny's horde. The battle had started again in earnest. Mouse archers sprang up and loosened their shafts down towards the ditch. Otter slings throwers whipped hard pebbles off with fierce rapidity. Long rat javelins flew upwards, causing death and injury in the ranks of the defenders. But now there was a new hazard. An inventive rat had devised a fearsome weapon. Chunks of iron, grave railings from the churchyard, strung to lengths of cords. The rats would swing the cord round and round, gaining momentum until, judging the right direction, they loosened the cord. The missile spread upward, 2 or 3 times higher than the wall, almost out of sight. They would plummet downward, whistling viciously to burst on the ramparts. Any defender struck by the missile was either instantly killed or horribly maimed. Even if the iron missed its target, the stones and shattered metal fragments ricocheted about dangerously. Realizing the danger of this new device, Constance ordered all but the chosen few to leave the wall for safety of the abbey grounds. However, the strung iron bits soon proved to be a two-edged weapon. Many that released wrongly came hurling back down into the ditch, sometimes slaying the very creature that had hurled them. Even Redtooth, in Cluny's armor, guarding the standard in the meadow, had to make an undignified scurry to avoid being hit. But he couldn't see the demoralizing effect the missiles were having on the defenders, so he ordered the throws to continue. Constance bravely stood her ground on the parapet, as did her small band of picked fighters. Whenever one of the missiles landed intact on the rubble pile, she would seize it, standing in full view as she rolled the corded iron round and round. She released in a blur of speed. Constance was far more powerful and accurate thrower than any rat. The attackers bared angry fangs at her from the cover of the ditch. Of all the Redwall defenders, the big badger was the one they most hated and feared. Seated in the branches of the elm at the north wall of the abbey, Cluny watched the shadows lengthen. To the west, the sky was crimson with sunset. Soon he would rise the plank to the parapet and let them beware. No tin pot order of mice was going to stand against the might of Kleiny the Scrooge. Melutha, the gatekeeper, stood facing the damaged tapestry in the great hall of Redwall. Being too old for active battle service, he responded that the best way he could serve his order was by putting his fertile brain to work. Somewhere there had been to be at least a clue, a single lead that might tell him where the rest of the piece of Martin the Warrior could be found, or where he could regain possession of the ancient sword of the Abbey. But where? Every now and then, over the years, Mathuth had searched through Redwall for Martin and his sword. Now he stepped up his questioning activities, alas, with no success. Virtual clues and answers still eluded him. What he needed was a younger, fresher mind to assist him. What a pity that Mathis could not be found. Now there was a young mouse with a head on his shoulders. Long years and much mental strain had taken their toll on the ancient mouse. Wearily he swayed on his feet and putting out a paw to steady himself. He touched the wall, the exact patch of stone over which Martin's likeness had once hung. Matthews gave a sigh of satisfaction and allowed a small smile to creep across his features. His search had not been in vain. Beneath his paw was writing carved into dust-covered wall. And with that, we will conclude this section of Redwall. And the next one that I'll do with Redwall, we'll move on to the second section. Until then.